Greetings, my name is Peter Alexander. Long time no see. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to rig a robe for Character Creator 4 and iClone. Step 1 is to import the garment as an accessory preferably. Always save a copy of your garment as an OBJ, because later if your clothing gets distorted you can re-import the clothing as a mesh shape using the replace mesh function. Basically what that will do is fix the vertex positions. Occasionally skinning the mesh will deform the vertex positions, so it's good to have a backup of your original shape. Once you've imported your accessory, your clothing accessory, you go to transfer skin weights, choose a preset. I just chose dress because this is a long garment. 90% of the process is smoothing weights, adding weights, subtracting weights as you apply poses and animation to see how the clothing deforms. During this process, some bones will receive the proper weights, but occasionally the process will bleed over onto bones that shouldn't have weights. I will list those bones. If you put weights on those bones, and you exit and re-enter your skinning menu, you'll probably receive an error, and it'll try to auto-correct it. If you check the bones, and it turns out that you have put skinning weights on them, what I tend to do is use the selection tool on the entire mesh and zero out the weights on that bone. And it should be less of a problem going forward after you do that. How you determine where the weight should go? Basically, it's kind of common sense, but also when you dial in an animation or a pose and the deformation is not operating properly, go to the bones associated with that deformation and smooth out, add, subtract as needed. And it can be a very frustrating process. It can take hours. It can take, well, in some cases it can take days, but in this case it took less than an hour to do this character. You'll often encounter areas that are a bit more stubborn than others, and they'll take a bit more time to properly fix. You'll see that around the armpit here. When I reach that point, it doesn't cooperate that well with me, and I spend most of my time basically on that area. And that's just how it goes. Just keep posing your character, smoothing out areas, subtracting, adding weights, and basically that's the entire process. And if your mesh gets deformed somehow, like you'll subtract weights and then an area will puff out, send your character to its default pose, and you can use the replace mesh function to fix that with the OBJ that you've previously saved. And you may say to yourself, well, there's physics, so why do we need skin weights? Basically, the physics are not going to be able to do the entire job. So you want the skinning weights to cooperate with the physics weights. I would say you want the skinning weights to do the heavy lifting, and the physics weights just to provide some natural cloth effect. And just a heads up, you're going to run into animations where this is not going to be perfect. Like there's the parkour animations where the characters are flipping, and it also depends on the type of clothing you're creating. Like armor, rigid armor is not going to work well with every animation because there's naturally when you're wearing armor, there's certain movements you just can't do, and like character creator doesn't really care about those limitations. So the character's flipping around and putting his arms up in the air, and you can't do that with armor, but you can do that in character creator. So in iClone, so you're gonna have some like deformations that are just not going to work correctly with that armor. You're just going to have to animate around it, and the same goes with cloth physics. Like this robe is not going to accommodate every single movement. Basically, the goal here is to get it mostly working right, so that if the character's walking, you're not going to have a lot of problems. And if you're doing an animation project, you're going to have to repair some of this anyways. It's just the way it is. For games, it's you want to get it as close as possible, but they're going to have its own physics engine as well, like Unreal or Unity. And don't get too frustrated if you cannot accommodate every single animation combination. That's basically what I'm saying. And another thing, if you're creating characters and clothing for a character creator, you're going to have to acknowledge the limitations of the engine and design around it. Like when I first designed this character, he had a big flowing robe, and it was great and everything, but I couldn't get it to cooperate with the weights and the physics. So you're going to have to design around limitations of the engine. And 3D in general, it's about problem solving. So, work within your limitations, design within your limitations, and just try to make it work. Areas like this, they're kind of like whack-a-mole. You fix one weight, and it seems to be the right thing, and another issue pops up. So this can take like 40 minutes at least, just this one area. It's a combination of there's not being enough geometry, the weights being in the wrong place. They're as I smooth it out, it's transitioning to the wrong bone. So you have to identify the bones that are being used and add, subtract, smooth out, and as you'll eventually see in this, the weights actually go to the wrong bone. They go to one of the bones that I specified that they shouldn't go to, which is I believe it's the upper arm. And I just selected everything when I found that and zeroed it out. And then I moved those weights over to another bone. As you can see here, it's starting to come together. It's still kind of whack-a-mole. I'm smoothing stuff out, and it's not quite going in the right place, but it's covering. If the garment, when it deforms, covers the character's skin, then you're heading in the right direction. And from there, it's just tweaking it. When you get an area like this, and you'll see that the transition is kind of jagged, just find the various bones where that transition exists, and do your best to smooth it out, and that should fix most of those issues. So right here, I identified that it was the calf twist. I mean. Which is 2 bones, and the upper thigh or the thigh bone twist bones. Again, you don't want to paint on the calf controller bone or the thigh controller bone. I believe it's called the controller bone. Basically, it's the bone, the parent bone of those twist bones. So only paint on the twist bones for those bones, not the left thigh itself. Otherwise, you'll run into errors. And you'll run into issues like this where certain movements are kind of like they're clipping the mesh, and you try to eliminate those as much as possible. In the end, you might have to just hide the underlying mesh, and there is a function in Character Creator for that. For this rigid ring, which is a component of the overall garment, I don't want that to deform like cloth, so I want to apply the weights on that ring to be uniform across the mesh and applied to the spine 2, which is the chest. So you can see here that the weights are not applied correctly. See, the ring's kind of moving all over the place. It's because the majority of the weights are assigned to probably the clavicle. So I want to assign those weights, 75% of them around there, to the spine 2, which is the chest bone, and assign like 10% to 25% to the clavicle and the upper arm. The reason you want the weights to be applied uniformly across the mesh and not blended with another bone, like a gradient, is because if the arm moves and half of the item is blended with the chest, when the arm moves, it will deform a rigid item the way it shouldn't be. It'll deform it like it's cloth or Play-Doh or something. If you apply like 75% of the weights to the chest and just say 10% to the clavicle and 15% to the upper arm, it will still deform, but it'll deform in a more rigid way. So when the arm moves, it'll only slightly move the ring, and it'll mostly adhere to the chest. As you're fixing the weights on one area of the mesh, other areas may become more of a mess. So as I said, it's like playing whack-a-mole at times. There'll be a stage where it's very frustrating, and you just gotta stick with it and subtract weights, blend weights until it all starts to make sense. At this point, you can use the hide body mesh tool to hide the underlying polygons when this robe is worn. And that'll just mitigate any clipping issues, because the skinning process is never going to be 100% perfect. You don't want to hide like elements that might be revealed in physics. With physics, like if the character moves and his shin is revealed in that pose and during that physics simulation, you don't want there to be an invisible leg there. That'll just look odd. So you want to hide the areas that are going to be mostly concealed by the garment itself, but will not be available, will not be visible during certain poses and simulations. So I'm not going all the way down to his feet. I'm just going down to his knees. And I will just select hide once I'm satisfied that this is the area that I'm going to send this character to Blender. You can also send the robe to ZBrush, any other 3D software. Basically, I'm going to be creating a black and white map to serve as the physics map. White enables physics. Black negates physics, disables it. So a fully white robe, or sorry, a fully white map on this robe, the robe will just fall right to the ground. A fully black weight map applied to this robe, it'll have no physics. So basically, 100% black, 0 physics, 100% white, full physics, 50% black and white, which is gray, will be 50% physics. So the areas I want to be white are closer to the bottom of the robe, and maybe the sleeve, part of the sleeve, and then part of the midsection of the robe. So gradients are good here. A gradient that transitions from black to white. That'll give you some flexibility in how and fall off of how the physics affects the garment. And just so you know, I won't be using any of this Blender file except for the physics weight map. So you could actually just paint this on the diffuse channel, a black and white map, and just save it. Or you can use the weight map painter in the Blender auto setup add-on, because it has a function specifically for that. So it's up to you. For my purpose, for this particular project, I just want a black and white map, which I will use as the physics map. So I think this weight map represents a good combination. It's black where it needs to be controlled more by the skin weights, and white where it needs to be simulate physics a little bit more. This map, which I saved, can now be applied to the robe in the physics section of Character Creator 4. In order to make physics work in Character Creator or iClone, you have to enable a soft cloth and rigid body in your project. if the physics effects are too strong or too weak, aside from playing with the parameters in the physics section, you can also go to the physics weight map itself and adjust the contrast and the brightness. I find this very useful for diluting or increasing the strength of the physics effect. Just understand that when you save your file, it will save your physics weight map in that state, because you're actually altering the image itself. You can bring this to an even better state by adjusting the collision settings and playing with the physics settings a little bit better. But this is sufficient for like a 40-minute job. Anyways, I'm Peter Alexander. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, let me know and I will try to answer them. Thank you. Bye.